Greetings to all, and a warm welcome to yet another episode, the penultimate of the podcast series about the sacred groves of India. It has been a pleasure listening about the sacred groves from the north, followed by the east, central, and south of India. Hi, my name is Napoleon, and I'm your host for the episode titled Devrai, the Ancient Ark, where Anuj Gudekar, a final year student of Masters of Architecture in Landscape from the prestigious L.S. Raheja School of Architecture, Mumbai, will be discussing the sacred groves of Maharashtra. Anuj is an assistant professor in L.S. Raheja School of Architecture. He has a Masters of Science degree from Oxford Brookes University, UK. Anuj has always been interested in the ecology and environment, and through this master's course, he intends to further his learnings. One can find him most active on Instagram during the month of October, or should I say Inktober, where he weaves the prompts into masterful narratives informing the audience about the mysterious marine life. If this interests you, do find him on Instagram under the alias AnHuge.
Hi, thank you for the nice and quick introduction and a huge shout out for my work. It is my pleasure to be on this podcast to inform the audience about the mystical sacred groves of Maharashtra. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Prasad Gowde, famous as Konkani Ranmanus Tourism on YouTube, an engineer who has taken up responsible ecotourism to every home and heart. His work has inspired me to take the study of the sacred forest of Maharashtra. The 180,000 square kilometer chain of mountain ranges running parallel to western coast of Indian peninsula, the Western Ghats, is a complex network of ecological systems. The Western Ghats are among the most biodiverse regions of the world. The perseverance of these systems in play can be attributed to a complex yet simple relationship between nature, animal, and man. Yes, the third wheel of the story, who through the age-old wisdom passed on as a belief and a narrative, is vital for sustenance of this inheritance.
From what has been discussed earlier, I have understood that these groves are protected by the villagers. But is there a criteria to the setting of these groves? How did you decide on these case examples?
The criteria being that the groves should have survived through generations and is known for continued sustenance of its endemic species. Endemism is a state of species being native to a single defined geographic location. As mentioned earlier, I drew my inspiration from Mr. Prasad's work, who through his YouTube channel Konkani Ranmanus informs the audience about these sacred groves. I had seen a few of these episodes where he covered the sacred forests of Konkan. Thus, these three case examples, that is Ahupe Sacred Grove of Bhimashankar Pune, Dungobachi Rai of Newti, Rai here stands for Devrai, that is sacred forest for the locals, and Achra Mangrove Forest of Achra was shortlisted for their distinct settings and contexts. The choice of these sacred groves was consciously made based upon their respective unique settings. A plateau on a western ghat, a rainforest abutting a confluence of stream, a river, and the sea, and the last being a mangrove forest. The Ahupe Sacred Forest, a plateau on the western ghat, has its own ecosystem with series of rain-fed streams and ponds. It is a deciduous semi-evergreen forest with annual rainfall ranging from 6,000 to 7,000 millimeters and climate ranging from tropical type hot in summers and moderately cool in winters. While Dungobachi Rai is unique rainforest on a hillock at measuring 2 hectares, abutting the Arabian Sea from 3 sides and a river arising from the springs and streams from the hillock. It is the biggest sacred grove of Sindhudurg district along the Vengurla coast. Achra Mangrove Forest is the largest mangrove forest along the western coast of India, covering 210 hectares, home to 20 species of mangroves from 40 endemic to India. The mangrove forest has been attributed to protection from tides, cyclonic disturbances, and in addition, known to have contributed to carbon sequestration.
Can you elaborate the unique settings in any of these groves? And does its listing help in uninterrupted continuation of these processes?
Yes, indeed. Take the case of Dungobachi Rai, where the balance of salty water is countered or kept in check with streams originating from the hillock. If one takes a look at how these springs and streams occur in nature, one would agree on the fact that had it not been for the listing as a sacred grove, some of the other anthropogenic activity could have had an impact on these natural processes.
Is association of water intrinsic for a forest to be termed as a sacred grove?
Yes, since self-sustenance is key for survival of these groves, water does become one of the crucial factors. Having said that, and through the earlier podcasts, we have learned the forest type is responsible to the elevation and the climatic condition along with other resources. However, in the three case examples for this study, the association of water has been seen in varying degree and quality. The sacred forests play a vital role in water and land conservation through its conservative approaches of keeping the litter fall, which in a way slows the flow of water and allows for absorption. The undisturbed geology too allows for continuation of natural processes of streams, springs as seen in Dungoba Chirai, which helps in keeping the check in saltwater ingress. While in Achra mangrove forest, the root system anchors the soil and is nursery for breeding and nurturing of aquatic species. The brackish water is home to mud crabs and the oysters, which during the monsoon contributes to livelihood of the fisher folks.
What are the unique attributes of these sacred groves and its long sustenance?
The sacred groves are known as repository of flora and fauna. They are also an indicator of continued presence of these species, which might, as a whole or in part, be seen in places separated by a considerable distance. A case where the rainforest of Amboli, also known as Cherrapunji of West, is compared to the unique rainforest of Dungoba Chirai for the commonality of the flora observed. In addition, the unique settings of Dungoba Chirai, which sees confluence of streams arising from its springs, the river and the Arabian Sea through the lagoon, makes it an interesting case for understanding land water and its ecological relationship. Whereas in the third example, that is the Achra mangrove forest, it talks about the reverence of the Koli, that is the fishing tribe, towards the mangrove, a unique confluence of sustenance in the intertidal zone, as well as protection from the seasonal cyclonic disturbances.
Since we are establishing the ecological connection for continued sustenance, is this sacredness towards the deity or nature?
Often these sacred groves are linked to deity worship by the village protecting the groves. Thus, it gives one an insight of the cultural and religious association of people and place. In my opinion, sacredness or protection is towards nature, as idol worship, if any, is towards the natural elements, that is, the rocks, tree trunks, etc. A term locally known as Swayambhu, which means something that occurs naturally. In addition, a lack of a physical temple furthers this claim. The Ahupe village of Mahadev Koli tribe river Bhima Shankar or Shiva, while Dungoba Chirai earns its name from the deity Dungoba, and the Achra village has its reverence to Rameshwar. Having said that, the reverence to the deity is for well-being and protection of the forest as well as the village. The Gharane, a first-person prayer or a conversation between the man and the deity, portrays this relationship. Though the three case examples as discussed here imply two male deities, as heard in the previous podcast, we learned about the sacred groves of Kerala. The three case examples, that's the Valikattu Kavu of Kozhikode, Irangol Kavu, and Manarsala Sri Nagaraja Kavu had reference to female deities. The later example had reference to snakes and Bhadrakali goddess, and is one of its kind, where the priest is a brahmacharini, a woman who has vowed to live her life in celibacy for service to temple. In addition, the oldest snake idol is addressed as Apupan Gao, where Apupan is reference to grandfather or elderly, thus highlighting this reference to reverence as continuum. The reference of Mother Earth is also prevalent in few instances. Hence, one can observe reverence is towards the goddess or female deity.
So, what are the other ways that these sacred groves are beneficial to its people?
The term that we are looking here is an ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are the many and varied benefits to the humans provided by the natural environment and from healthy ecosystems. Ahupe Sacred Forest is known for the giant Indian squirrel, the state animal of Maharashtra, something that I too learned during the course of this study. Indian giant squirrels are primarily solitary and spend majority of their time in the upper canopies of tall and heavily branched trees of for their arboreal nature. One can find Indian mahogany or Chucrasia tabularis in abundance in the forest itself. So in a way, we have to be thankful for these sacred groves which has sustained the favorable habitat for the state animal. In addition, Ahupe is known for the forest that shines at night. The fairy tale phenomenon, which occurs because of fungus called mycena, that luminesces when exposed to excessive moisture. The fungus grows on wet rotting barks, leaves and roots of the trees in this forest, thus making everything gleam. The phenomenon is called bioluminescence and has been reported in very few of these forests. The best time to visit this forest to see this phenomenon is during the monsoon between July to September. While Dungobachi Rai, owing to its natural springs and river, balances the tidal inflow and salinity ingress, it is also known for its rich biodiversity and sacred attributes intrinsic to the local beliefs. I am just amazed at the processes that is at play and in this unique confluence. It really makes one think and admire the evolution theory, where each entity has its own part to play, but as a whole they complement each other. Achara mangrove forest, in the recent years of climate change and shift in weather patterns, has protected the villages along the coastal edge and the ecosystem that it supports. The recent cyclone, Taute, which hit the western coast of India, saw wind speed in excess of 150 km per hour, with devastating aftermath. However, the fortress of the mangrove forest of Achara played a pivotal role in protecting its coastline and its people. Achara mangrove forest is also known for supporting a diverse fauna, which include 4 species of kingfisher, the elusive frogmouth owl seen along the western India and Sri Lanka, thus making a case for an eco-sensitive tourism managed by the local fisher folks.
What are the myths and sacred practices associated with these sacred groves?
The commonality of not harvesting these forests is a widespread practice. Sacred groves are essentially located away from the village premise, discouraging one from picking up the resources for the daily purposes. The sanctity and this land stewardness of the sacred groves is kept through the reverence to the deity and associated myths that protect it. However, the reverence to the deities is for Navas and the offerings slightly differ. The prayers offered too differ based on region. There is also a belief of a protecting spirit called Devtar. He finds mention in folklore, a tall, dark man with thick moustache, dressed in traditional dhoti and black jacket and equipped with a thick stick adorned with a bell. One that warns the offender through a series of signs, but is also known to be forgiving once the offender corrects themselves. There is also a belief where disturbance to these sacred groves has resulted in floods and or famines or both. There is more scientific reasoning to these catastrophes. However, one cannot deny the balance in the systems attributed to the groves. Hence, a slight change could be catalyst in unfavorable chain of events.
Do you think these sacred groves are at risk, with growing tourism and reduced numbers of villagers protecting them?
These groves are untouched or even less disturbed by anthropogenic activities. However, the increase in extent of anthropogenic activities is arresting these protected groves and threatening its existence. In addition, the ease of access to these sacred groves through the World Wide Web and the opportunity for an alternative income poses a threat to these sacred forests. I would not go to an extent saying that the villagers are not protecting, but I do agree that the custodians of these legacies have migrated for better opportunities, thus threatening the continued sustenance of these sacred groves. Hence, there is a need for good governance and an informed ecotourism model which could help in a broader outreach and hence a better protection of these sacred groves.
How would you look at a way forward in protecting these sacred groves?
Mr. Prasad Gaude himself reserves the need to reveal the exact location of these groves, for he has seen the ill effects of the unchecked and irresponsible tourism. One cannot ignore the reach of the World Wide Web. Thus, I would look at using it to further the information and awareness of these sacred groves. However, the information would be shared with an appeal for the visitor for a more conscious effort of protecting these repositories. One can also look up the need to popularize folk tales like that of Devtar, which would deter the visitor from vandalizing and plundering the forest. A well-informed stewardship program and a stringent policy framework for protecting these sacred groves can be adopted and encouraged for a continued sustenance of these groves.
All right. I do hope that the sacred forests are looked after, or rather left undisturbed to continue to flourish as intended. I'm glad to have this discussion, especially since we also looked at the mangroves as a sacred forest. For we have seen it in our own backyards and have learned of their importance with increased numbers and intensities of the cyclones along the western coast, followed by the extended torrential monsoons.
Great. I do like the term backyard. Rings a bell in my head with respect to mangroves being termed as a weed grown in one's backyard by a architect. I guess it was namesake for housing for all.
We've all come full circle, and now that we've seen the severity of climate change in our own backyard, we should be thankful that our ancestors left the ark for us. Thank you, Anuj, for this lovely discussion. We were just warming up with some candid banter. Maybe we will keep it for later. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast series. I do hope you are enjoying the podcast by these passionate bunch of students applying their learnings, decoding ecological systems. Stay tuned for the finale with Rohan Patil, who will be looking at the sacred groves of the Aravalli range. Do like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, LSR Landscape.